Earlier this week, our friend to the show, Tori McElhaney, had an opportunity to catch up with Terry Fontenot. And they talked a little bit about Desmond Ridder, kind of gave a little bit of an update on QB1. And I'll quote, we've talked a lot about Desmond and how excited we are about him. I know every time we talk to him or reach out to him, he's somewhere working, and that's who he is as a person. Why? Well, because Fontenot feels Ridder and Taylor Heinicke maybe have a certain slate of intangibles that make them good players to build around. Now, speaking of those intangibles, Fontenot went on to say this about Desmond Ridder and Heinicke. I don't care how much physical talent you have, doesn't matter. Both of those players have the intangibles. We know the way they're going to work, the way they're going to compete, but what exactly do we think that Fontenot's talking about in terms of the intangibles?
I think that matters just from when you're building a team, so to speak, and not necessarily, hey, let's go get this superstar quarterback, regardless of how he is with guys in the locker room and all that stuff. We just bring in the talent and then we'll figure it out. I think more so the approach that Fontenot is coming at with this thing is the fact that, hey, we want to build a team around this guy. And then once we build a team around this guy, we want to make sure that he's able to function around those guys and be the leader that we know that he needs to be in order for this team to compete in the division. Because at the end of the day, just look around the division. You got Derek Carr. He's new. He's coming in. You got Kyle Trask and Baker Mayfield down in Tampa. I'm not scared of that. And then you got C.J. Stroud or C.J. Stroud in Carolina. You know what I mean? So I think when you have all of those determining factors within your division, like, hey, there's no set any favorite in the division right now. That's how I feel about it. So in order to become that, I think you need to have a team and not necessarily, hey, let's go get this superstar quarterback and try to figure it out after that. So after the fact, because I think Terry Fontenot is thinking short term and long term. Because in the short term, you can go out and go get a Lamar Jackson, if I could use that example. But when you think about the aspect of fixing your issues that you've had for so long, up front, offensive line, defensive line, getting to the quarterback, protecting the quarterback in the pass game, all of those things are factors as to why we hear Terry Fontenot speaking a different language this year, I feel, is the fact, hey, we want to be up front. We want to solidify, we want to fortify that front. We want to make sure we go out and go get guys that can fit and be a part of what we have going on. And Matt Collins even saying, hey, I like the vibes. All of that stuff matters. I love the language that's coming out of Terry Fontenot's mouth this offseason, because people wanted to refuse to hear what the man had to say when it came to Desmond Ridder. That's why I feel like we are having these conversations, because if you listen to him, he said, like, from the get-go, I like the consistency. And what did he mention right then and there? Hey, the guy, every time I talk to him, he's out somewhere working. All of those things matter when it comes to GMs and head coaches and play callers, especially when that play caller and the coach are the same person. Those are the type of things that kind of let you sleep at night, to know, hey, in order to compete in this division, we got to have this guy doing what he needs to do on and off the field, and we have that. Now it's up to me, Terry Fontenot, to doggone build around him so, hey, they can be a formidable opponent once the season gets rolling in September.
Yeah, and I think the practicality of it is important as well, because I suspect that Desmond Ridder isn't just working by himself. So whether that's with Drake London, whether that's with Kyle Pitts or whomever, I believe, and I was having this conversation a couple of days ago about the importance of giving those two, particularly KP and Ridder, the opportunity to develop some chemistry so that we can really see what Desmond Ridder is working with. You had 4 games last year, and essentially he didn't have any opportunity to really see how he could work with the leader in his tight end room. He didn't really have a chance to see, other than with Drake London, whom he'd been working with the entire season, how he was going to work with that entire pass catching core. So I do think that above and beyond just what Fontenot said about Desmond Ridder, it kind of also speaks to, wonder who else he's working with in the off season. A lot of guys like to go out to California and do some reps, if you will. A lot of them may train with the same person. A lot of them just try to connect in the off season so that they can bring that to training camp, to OTAs, and ultimately to the regular season. So I do think that there's an opportunity there, if they're starting to grind in that way, for the Falcons to be as much of a part of the conversation about who's going to take the NFC South as anyone else. Now, interestingly enough, there was some conversation, speaking of defenseless players, and we all know that's really more for the protection of the offense. But anyway,
that's what
the
it is.
quarterback. Let's be real.
These are the facts of the case.
Exactly. Right. So we saw this article on, what is it, Pro Football Talk,
yeah.
and it talked about expanding the definition of a launch for more protection of players. Now, I'll just give you an idea of what it says right now. The NFL may add 2 words to the definition of launch in the official rule book, and those 2 words could result in more penalty flags being thrown. But the league is actually hoping it means fewer injuries. So right now, it's illegal to launch into an opponent, and this is the exact definition, who is in a defenseless posture. And currently, the definition is when a player, quote, leaves both feet prior to contact to spring forward and upward into his opponent. Now, under the rule proposed by the competition committee, it'll say, quote, leaves one or both feet prior to contact to spring forward and upward into his movement. Okay. I feel like we're really getting way too technical about this thing. And maybe if we can just focus on improving our referees' abilities on calling appropriate penalties, maybe that's the starting point, as opposed to trying to regulate the game so much that you're getting down into the minutia of verbiage.
Yeah, and that's the problem with the NFL, right? They make things too difficult, because at the end of the day, if we believe that you have the safety of the players, you won't have to worry about adding letters and words to this rule to make it sure, like, hey, we're protecting the players, and then these type of rules are the rules that the owners always push through. And here's why. I'm gonna go a little diabolical here. See, you know why they probably pushing these rules through? Because they don't want to pay out lawsuits. You know what I'm saying? And last time I checked, they still haven't paid out the one that they quote unquote settled. So they still working on getting those payouts coming down the line. So I think that whatever rule or whatever adjustment they can make to these rules to make it seem like they are of the on the player side, as far as when it comes to safety, they're going to push it through. And I think the motivation behind it is all wrong. That's why I don't feel like they'll never get it right. So when you look at these situations, you're trying to make things more difficult for these referees, especially when you're talking about bang, bang plays. These plays are happening within seconds, people, and milliseconds. And you're asking these referees to do things that they know they can't do real time. And it's always going to be a bad look for you if you're sitting up here throwing a flag for something, and then when you finally slow it down and break it down, it's like, no, that didn't happen. That was a legal hit. And I think that the more and more they add to and try to change up these rules, the more and more convoluted these things become. And then you're gonna find yourself looking at a situation where, like, wait a minute, is this still football?
Yeah. And you'll find yourself looking at a 4-hour football game, because the time that it's going to take to break this down and figure out whether it was 1 foot, 2 feet, whether or not it was a kind of a launching at or whatever, it just seems like that's getting into the minutia and kind of getting away from the spirit of the game. Right. And you look at what other leagues, I'll give you Major League Baseball, for example. Now, granted, they're kind of adjusting this whole rule around the pitch clock, but they still instituted it for the purposes of speeding up their game and kind of keeping the pace of their game going. This is the very thing that could go in the opposite direction for the NFL if they're not careful. It's going to extend the game, and not that people really ever tap out of football, but you certainly don't want to compromise the product in that regard, if at all possible. Now, speaking of compromising a product, that's never the case when it's Built bars, right? Because you always see Built making strides in improving their product and what they bring to the table. And they also like to have a little fun with it too. And that is why the Built March Madness bracket is here. We know you may have a favorite bar, a puff. Now's your time to make that count, because guess what? You can go to builtmarchmadness.com to vote for your favorite. So already I'll be voting for the cookie dough bar. I think we have established that. And if you want your favorite bar to win, then you'll be voting for that bar. You can support your team, you can support your bar. And when you vote for your favorite bar or puff, you'll be entered into a drawing where 50 people 50 lucky Locked On listeners will be able to get a free box of Built. But it doesn't stop there. It's also a cool thing that one Locked On fan will be able to get a box of 4 Built bars for 12 months. How cool is that? So we all like the free. That's free. Now, you got to go ahead and try Built. And the reason you want to do that is because we know it's the best protein bar ever. Best because you get 15 grams of protein in one candy bar, 100% real chocolate. The calories have gone down. They've been able to get it down to 130 calories per bar and just 4 grams of sugar. So again, it's the healthiest, happiest, and I say happy because when you eat it, I think you're going to be happy. It's the healthiest, happiest bar out there. Don't forget, you got to go to Built March Madness. I don't want you to go to the wrong place. BuiltMarchMadness.com. First of all, come to ATL Day Ones as you always do. But as soon as you wrap up here, go to BuiltMarchMadness.com. Place your vote and maybe look at being a Built Bar eater for 12 months for free.